Have you ever felt on the verge of exploding just because someone provoked you? Have you ever had the sensation that any harsh word, any cold gesture, any misinterpreted silence has the power to destabilize you from within? Maybe the world isn't hurting you. Maybe you just haven't learned how to protect yourself yet. In this video, you'll discover the 10 Stoic rules that transform ordinary people into emotional fortresses. Principles used by emperors, philosophers, and quiet leaders who learned not to be shaken by criticism, not to depend on others' approval, and to maintain inner peace even amidst chaos. Here you'll learn how to use silence as a shield, how to master your impulses and stop reacting, how not to be hurt by others' opinions, how to stay calm when everyone else is shouting. And the best part, you'll understand in a practical way what Stoicism really is. Not a cold theory, but a vibrant philosophy of life that protects, strengthens, and liberates. Some people think being strong means shouting louder, that winning means retaliating in kind, that maintaining your dignity always requires a fitting response. But those who have walked the path of self-knowledge, who have drunk from the well of Stoic philosophy, know that true strength makes no noise. It remains silent. The first step to becoming emotionally untouchable is realizing that reacting automatically is like handing your peace to the world on a silver platter. Every time you respond to an attack, every time you justify yourself, every time you reply in the heat of anger, you give others the remote control to your soul. Practical Stoicism begins right here, when you choose not to react, not because you're weak, but because you've become too great to be shaken by so little. Epictetus said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our opinion of them." And this is the key to Stoic self-control. When you understand that a provocation only has power if it finds space within you, an invisible armor is born. Stoic maturity. It manifests in the powerful silence of someone who knows their own worth. There's no longer a need to prove anything or to win arguments that only feed wounded egos. The Stoic mind is one that observes chaos but doesn't get entangled in it. It hears criticism but doesn't succumb to its poison. It chooses calm when everything around seems to provoke war. And here's a secret of the wise. The more you react, the more predictable you become. And the more predictable you are, the more manipulable you become. Reacting is what they expect from you. It's what fuels the cycle of offense, hurt, and confusion. But when you break that cycle, when you refuse to take the bait, something magical happens. The other person loses control, the environment reorganizes itself, and you, in silence, remain your own safe harbor. This isn't passivity, it's emotional intelligence, it's emotional protection, it's self-mastery. And it's just the beginning of the journey for those who want to discover how to be untouchable. How many times have you lost sleep trying to solve something beyond your reach? How many conversations have you replayed in your mind? How many hypotheses have you created? How many scenarios have you invented just to try to control the uncontrollable? The untrained mind becomes a simulation machine, and almost all of them lead to exhaustion. At its most practical core, Stoic philosophy invites a shift in focus, from the external world to the internal, from external variables to internal ones. Because the truth is simple and profound, you don't have power over events, but you have absolute power over how you interpret them, react to them, and allow them to affect you. Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment you distinguish between what is within your control and what isn't. The weather, traffic, others' opinions, the reactions of those around you, all of this is beyond your grasp. And yet, that's where we spend most of our emotional energy. The Stoic mind, on the other hand, trains daily to return to what matters. How to stay calm in the face of the unexpected. How not to be shaken by others' lack of control. How to choose powerful silence when the shouting demands a stage. This conscious choice is the beginning of an emotional strength that doesn't depend on luck or circumstances, but on habit and clear vision. Mastering the mind is like learning to breathe in the middle of a hurricane. The world may spin, the winds may blow against you, but your center remains steady. That center is your stoic self-control, your internal compass that guides you with stoic wisdom through daily tensions. And the more you practice this, and yes, it's a practice, the more you'll realize that much of what you called a problem was just a frustrated expectation of control. Emotional protection arises from letting go of illusions of external power. And the more you accept this truth, the closer you get to the next discovery. It's unsettling to realize that much of the suffering we feel doesn't come from what happens to us, but from what we think about what happens. This is one of the hardest and most liberating lessons Stoicism offers. Because as long as you believe others have power over your peace, you'll live as a hostage to their gestures, words, and attitudes that you can't control. But when you understand that everything that hurts you first passes through the filter of your mind, you begin to reclaim something invaluable, sovereignty over yourself. It's not about denying pain. It's about understanding where it truly originates. The Stoic mind is shaped by the awareness that interpretation precedes emotion. Does betrayal hurt? Yes. Does rejection sting? Of course. But what truly shatters us isn't the event itself. It's what we come to believe about ourselves afterward. I'm not enough. I'll never trust again. I'll always be abandoned. These phrases echo inside like invisible blows, undermining our emotional strength. And this is exactly where Stoic self-control acts as a shield. By guarding your thoughts, you also guard the gateway to pain. You can't stop the world from trying to hurt you, but you can stop the wound from taking root. Epictetus said, "No one can harm you without your consent." At first glance, it seems like an exaggeration, but it's simply the radical nature of freedom. The freedom not to be destroyed by what doesn't deserve permanence. Stoic wisdom teaches that true emotional protection begins with the daily choice not to absorb what doesn't belong to you. Harsh words, cold glances, indifferent gestures, they may touch your skin, but they only enter if you open the door. And when you close that door firmly, you realize that nothing, absolutely nothing, has more power than what you've granted to yourself. This discovery paves the way for a new kind of calm. In today's world, where haste screams, emotions explode, and nerves are always on edge, the person who manages to stay calm becomes almost a rarity, a mystery, a silent fortress. And perhaps that's why they unsettle others so much, because their tranquility exposes others' lack of control. But this calm doesn't come by chance. It's cultivated as a subtle art. And like any true art, it requires discipline, awareness, and surrender. Stoic philosophy teaches that inner peace isn't the absence of external conflict, but the ability to remain whole even when everything around is crumbling. Being calm in chaos doesn't mean being cold, indifferent, or apathetic. It means being centered. It means having a stoic mind, steady like a rock beneath the waves. Even when the waves crash hard, it remains unmoved at the bottom. This serenity is one of the most powerful Stoic rules because it doesn't impose itself with shouts, but establishes itself with presence. It disarms attacks, diffuses tensions, and reveals a kind of strength that doesn't need to prove anything. It's the calm of someone who's realized that emotional control is more effective than any impulsive reaction. Of someone who practices Stoicism as a way of life, not as mere rhetoric. In times of chaos, the unshaken person becomes a beacon. And it's not uncommon for others to start seeking them out for shelter, advice, or simply their quiet presence. Being that kind of person isn't about ego or vanity. It's silent service. It's influence without effort. It's emotional protection in its purest form. And more than that, it's Stoic maturity at its highest. Because while many still fight to overcome storms, you learn to walk through them. And in that silent walk, you begin to discover the value of not reacting and the beauty of protecting your peace like a treasured gem. One of the most common and painful traps in life is taking everything personally. A sideways glance, a sharp word, a cold gesture, and just like that, your heart shuts down, your mind starts spinning stories, and your peace slips through your fingers. But according to Stoic philosophy, this isn't sensitivity. It's emotional slavery. Because those who take everything as an offense hurt themselves constantly. And those who hurt constantly live at the mercy of others. Epictetus said that no one can humiliate you without your permission, and this is one of the greatest proofs of emotional intelligence. Stoic maturity begins when you decide not to turn every external action into a reflection of your self-worth. Taking everything personally is like carrying an emotional alarm that goes off at the slightest touch. In this state, every criticism becomes an attack, every silence becomes rejection, every disagreement becomes betrayal. But when you cultivate a Stoic mind, you start to see others' words for what they truly are. Projections, reflections of their stories, their pain, their limitations. And that changes everything. Because when you realize that what others say doesn't define who you are, you protect yourself with the most powerful shield: clarity. You stop trying to explain yourself, to retaliate, to fix things. And you start choosing powerful silence as your response. True emotional protection isn't built by shouting, "Respect me," but by cultivating an inner state where disrespect finds no home. It's about not being shaken. It's about understanding that the greatest response is to move forward in peace. Practical Stoicism teaches that when you learn not to react to words that don't build, you start saving your energy for what truly matters. And that's not weakness. It's emotional strength in its most elegant form. It's an invisible nobility. And when you reach this state, you realize there's something even deeper waiting for you in the next step. There's a raw force that lives within all of us. It shows up in the impulse to shout, to respond immediately, to act in the heat of the moment. It's like a flame that rises quickly, burning everything around it, and often leaving us in ruins afterward. Stoic philosophy doesn't ignore this force. On the contrary, it observes it with clarity. Practical Stoicism begins exactly here. In the moment you decide not to be governed by your most immediate instincts, because those who act solely on the emotion of the moment inevitably build regrets for the future. Stoic maturity is, above all, self-mastery. Epictetus said, "No man is free if he is not master of himself." And this phrase cuts through the centuries with the same sharp truth. If you don't learn to restrain your impulses, someone will learn to use them against you. In the game of life, those who explode easily hand their emotional map to the enemy. And it doesn't matter if the adversary is a person, a criticism, or an uncomfortable situation. The problem isn't outside, it's within. The Stoic mind is the one that breathes before responding, that observes before acting, that chooses with awareness when most choose with anger. Mastering impulses isn't about suppressing yourself. It's about liberating yourself. Because true emotional strength isn't loud or dramatic. It reveals itself in the restrained gesture, the thoughtful word, the gaze that doesn't lose control. This strength doesn't need to prove it exists because it already governs on its own. And the more you cultivate this Stoic self-control, the more you discover a strange and powerful peace in not being dominated by anyone, not even by yourself. This peace is the fertile ground where something even greater grows. The freedom to be who you truly are, even under the invisible pressures trying to shape you from the outside. Few things enslave as much as the need to please. When you live seeking approval, every gesture becomes a test, every word a trap, and every silence from others a judgment. Your mind becomes a constant courtroom, and you're the defendant, always trying to prove something. But practical Stoicism is liberating precisely because it teaches the opposite. You don't need anyone's permission to live your truth. Stoic maturity begins the moment you realize that living authentically requires letting go of the need to be accepted. Epictetus would say that freedom isn't doing what you want, but not being dominated by what you desire, and that includes the desire to be loved, understood, or validated. When you depend on others' opinions to feel whole, you become a prisoner of the image they have of you. And the cruelest part? That image is constantly changing. Stoic self-control is, therefore, a kind of inner silence that says, I am what I am, and that's enough. The Stoic mind is built on this rock, knowing who you are even when no one else seems to see it. Stoic wisdom teaches that you only become untouchable when you stop dancing to the tune of external acceptance, when you learn to walk steadily even without applause. That's emotional protection. That's emotional strength. That's the kind of emotional balance that only grows when you stop begging for affection where there's no reciprocity. When you understand that true freedom is being faithful to your essence, even if it makes you misunderstood. And in that misunderstanding, you start to discover something even deeper. Not every response needs to be spoken. In fact, some of the most powerful responses are given in silence. When someone tries to provoke you, diminish you, or drag you into the field of anger, there's a hidden invitation. React. Prove something. Explain yourself. But practical Stoicism teaches the exact opposite. The Stoic mind doesn't bow to the need to retaliate. It retreats into its own dignity. And what's that called? Silent disdain. A subtle but powerful gesture. A no without words. An invisible shield that prevents others from accessing what's most precious, your inner peace. Stoic disdain isn't arrogance. It's emotional intelligence. It's looking at a provocation and deciding it's not worth your energy. That responding would mean stepping down a level you've already surpassed. It's like a warrior who knows they could win but chooses not to fight because the battlefield no longer matters. When you don't react, you frustrate the other person's game. You disarm them because what they want is control. They want to see your imbalance. They want to throw you off your axis, but when you offer silence, and only silence, they lose. And you win in the most challenging territory, within. Stoic maturity shines precisely in the choice not to engage in what doesn't elevate you. And that's more than wisdom. It's pure emotional protection. It's not being shaken. It's being untouchable without needing to be harsh. It's using elegance as a defense and absence as a response, because sometimes disappearing is speaking, and not retaliating is shouting, in a language only the wise understand. And the more you practice this refined restraint, the more you understand the power of powerful silence. And then, you come closer to an even rarer freedom. Most people live as if they're always waiting for something. A message, a response, a gesture of recognition, a sign that everything's okay. And this constant waiting makes them fragile. Because anything that depends on the external becomes a point of vulnerability. Stoic philosophy, however, offers a completely different path. It teaches that true emotional strength is born the moment you stop depending. When you no longer need validation, attention, or anyone's presence to feel whole, something within you awakens. It's as if you finally discover the key to your emotional freedom. Epictetus said, "He who is self-sufficient is invincible." And this is one of the hardest but most transformative Stoic rules to put into practice. The Stoic mind grows stronger in the silence of absence. When someone pulls away, it doesn't beg. When it's misunderstood, it doesn't despair. When it's not recognized, it doesn't change its own value. This isn't coldness. It's Stoic maturity. It's emotional control in its purest form. It's the ability to remain whole even when everything around seems to be falling apart. Because the Stoic doesn't anchor themselves in others. They build roots within themselves. Being invincible doesn't mean not suffering. It means suffering without breaking. It means walking with pain without losing direction. It means being alone and still feeling accompanied by your own essence. This emotional protection isn't bought, borrowed, or inherited. It's earned. And the more you let go of the need to depend on something or someone, the more you realize you already carry within you everything you were searching for outside. This discovery is the foundation of a new way of living and prepares the ground for understanding something even deeper about the true value of things. Have you ever stopped to think why something affects you so deeply while it barely touches someone else? Have you noticed how what destroys one person hardly scratches another? The answer isn't in what happens, but in the value we assign to what happens. Practical Stoicism brings us to this key point. Suffering is a choice of perception. Pain may be inevitable, yes, but suffering comes from the meaning we give to it. The Stoic mind, by understanding this, changes its relationship with the world. It begins to strip value from what hurts and redirect it to what strengthens. Epictetus taught that it's not the facts that affect us, but the judgments we make about them. This means nothing has real power until you recognize it as such. A criticism only hurts if you let it in. A loss only destroys you if you make it an end. A rejection only marks you if you turn it into a mirror of devaluation. When you reframe what you feel, you also reposition what affects you. Stoic wisdom lies in realizing that emotional control starts with the filter. What do I allow to stay? What do I choose to amplify? What do I give importance to without merit? And here's one of the most powerful Stoic rules. You are the one who sets the tone of the world you inhabit. If you value others' opinions above your peace, you'll live in war. If you give more weight to mistakes than to learning, you'll carry unnecessary guilt. If you insist on assigning value to what hurts, you'll keep bleeding where you should have already healed. But if you change this system of values, what was once offensive becomes irrelevant. What was chaos becomes a lesson. And what was fragility becomes emotional strength. And so, with Stoic maturity, emotional protection, and emotional balance, you become untouchable. Because understanding is only the first step. Living it is the real challenge. It's no use knowing silence is a weapon if you keep responding impulsively. It's no use knowing others' opinions don't define your value if, deep down, you still seek approval to feel whole. Stoic philosophy is an invitation to daily practice, to cultivating the Stoic mind, Stoic self-control, and the emotional strength that isn't built overnight, but once rooted, makes you truly untouchable. Not because the world changes, but because you change the way you exist in it. Now, I invite you. Which of these rules do you most need to apply today? What still makes you react, and why? Share your thoughts below. Reflect on it. There, you'll find practical tools to apply Stoicism to your routine and truly create a life with emotional balance, inner peace, and Stoic maturity. And of course, if this video touched you, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and share it with someone who needs this message. You're not here by chance. Your growth began the moment you chose to seek silence where there was once noise.